the Encuentro. It's a great pleasure that you will hear Shawne as a keynote speaker about these important issues, this important theme of our meeting. I'm going to read some data about you.
Okay.
It's a long curricula. Bueno, la doctora Miksa es profesora del Departamento de Bibliotecología e Información de la Universidad del Norte de Texas desde el año del 2002. Asimismo, en esa universidad, donde ha actuado como profesora, también ha dirigido 12 tesis de alumnos graduados. Ha sido también profesora visitante de la Escuela de Estudios de Información de la Universidad Estatal en Florida. Su área de especialidad pues es la catalogación y la clasificación, en donde ha tenido pues una serie de publicaciones. Las 3 últimas publicaciones de ella son tituladas A Framework of Automatic Subject Term Assignment for Text Categorization, an Indexing Conception-Based Approach, la cual fue publicada en el Journal of the American Society for Information Science and Technology. And Resource Description and Access, RDA, and New Research Potentials. Esta publicación apareció en el boletín de ASIS el año pasado. Ha sido invitada y ha presentado diversas conferencias sobre el tema de la catalogación en distintos eventos, como los siguientes. En la preconferencia de la American Library Association en Washington este año, donde presentó la conferencia RDA New Mark 21 Files and a Notebook Example. Otra es RDA What Cataloging Managers Need to Know. También en la conferencia anual de la ALA en 2010, en San Antonio, Texas, a principios de este año, en abril de 2010, From AACR2 to RDA and Update. E innumerables conferencias sobre este tema. Como ven, es un especialista en el tema de el nuevo código de catalogación y vamos a tener la oportunidad de escucharla. Go ahead, Miksa.
Thank you very much. Sounds very impressive. It's in Spanish. Good morning. Buenos dias. And that's about all I can give you. I apologize in advance for the Spanish on the slides. I used Google Translate at about 3 o'clock this morning. I'm very excited to have been invited to speak here at this conference. I've been involved in cataloging in some way, shape, or form since I was 18 years old as a student. And even before that, my favorite game was to take rocks and hide them in furniture and then excavate them and then catalog them. So it's in my blood. Okay. So, in recent years, the international cataloging community has begun to, or started to rethink bibliographic control, how it functions, and current information environment. Many have criticized the cataloging profession for not keeping up with the demands of times in terms of the volume of information produced and the types of information resources that are being created and used, how they are accessed, how they are linked in terms of bibliographic relationships between them. There have been many intense debates that I've been a part of as well about how much change is needed, what needs to be thrown out, what needs to be retained in terms of cataloging processes, tools, resources, and standards. One of the most intense debates concerns the very existence of the library catalog. In a recent editorial in Library Resource and Technical Services, Randy Roeder, who is I forget what institute he's at, but he's a cataloger. He wrote that much of our cataloging research, although useful, is focused on a delivery environment, the local catalog, and an information unit, the bibliographic record, that are likely to disappear in the near future. He continues by asserting that our current practices for providing access to information resources are neither sustainable nor in the profession's best interest. He believes that semantic data, the semantic web, is the future, and that our infrastructure needs to be thrown out. I somewhat agree with some of what he's saying, but I don't believe that library catalogs are going to disappear in the near future. As long as there are libraries, there will be a library catalog. Catalogs are representations of what the library collection is, no matter how small or how large that library may be, whether or not the resources actually reside in the library. A library can function as a portal to other information resources or databases, but its primary role is still the same. And instead of letting it disappear, we can evolve it. There's a lot of underlying urgency to issues such as the role of the library catalog, mainly due to this perceived threat resulting from our patrons, our users, ever increasing use of or dependence on and confidence in the internet and the web for quick searching. Very quick searching. Google can give you 20 million hits in 0.3 seconds. But they don't really give you any guarantee of the precision or relevance of the information, other than, as I understand it, a measure of its popularity. I think that much of this rather tremendous difference comes from a fundamental difference between deliberately structured information for access and having no particular structure at all. For example, and I call them a Google list, or information retrieval list, may believe that a structure of knowledge, such as a classification system or a thesaurus, is not necessarily in order needed to retrieve information resources that might answer a person's question. On the other hand, a traditional classificationist or cataloger would lean towards the opposite and ask where in the structure or where in the collection, such as a bibliographic database or a system organized by Dewey Decimal, where in that structure is the information resource with the answer that someone needs. Whereas the Googleist might simply say, no, where in the actual resource will the answer be found? By imposing a structure, we impose a level of judgment, and I don't see that level of judgment disappearing. This is a very long slide, sorry. I think this is a big indicator of how the role of cataloging is changing. The cataloger's role in this information environment in terms of the goals of organization and control of information resources, the ability to go beyond just a list or an index. It isn't enough to simply create records with just a certain set of data. I feel that cataloging is a communication process in which catalogers function as translators or interpreters of information and information resources. This is how I teach my students. So you're not just a cataloger, you're a translator. This communication process involves translation between the user, the information resource, but also translation between the resource and the system itself. And through the process of the organization and control of multiple levels of entities, we have works, expressions, manifestation, items, persons, events, corporate bodies, concepts, objects, all of these entities for access and use. This act of translation, when done well, should enable the system, the user, and the information resources to come together on a common ground. Now, Mr. Roeder, who I quoted earlier, believes that the semantic data and the semantic web are the future, and he may be right. But I feel that with RDA, we move in a step in that same direction, but maybe along a different pathway. And that's going to impact our research and our practice in many, many ways. I think the cataloger has a voice. The cataloger or the librarian, for example, at least in the United States, they once interpreted search results for the user, or at the very least with users. But this is happening less and less, if at all. And users search alone within the catalog system, and the only voice the librarian may have, and thus the only guidance we can give them, is the catalog record itself. I think one of the more important changes to the practice of cataloging is basing of RDA on these conceptual models of functionality, FRBR, FRAD, FRSAD. To start, it's very important for catalogers to understand not only the process of bibliographic control, but also the underlying conceptual model of the catalog as a relational database based on the entity relationship model. And I feel that this is an area in which many catalogers, in the U.S. at least, are deficient. They don't see the catalog as a database. It's a catalog, a card catalog, or an OPAC. I think they must understand the core principles guiding the construction and the maintenance of a database system. Most importantly, the cataloger needs to know why information is organized in a certain way in order to help the user accomplish the certain tasks as they search collection of information resources. So FRBR and FRAD and FRSAD are an important step towards this understanding, because it gives us a model based on relationships between entities and tasks that need to be supported by the kind of data we input and how we structure that data. And this is what cataloging does. We've been doing this for a long time. We just have to rethink about how we're making these connections. So any database starts with a conceptual model. What do we want it to do? What do we want this database to do? What kind of data does it need? How do we put data in it? How do users get information out of it? How do choices about conceptual models affect how a person retrieves information? So catalogers are not just limited to the creation of representations or surrogates of information resources. They are continually involved in continually governing or controlling these representations within the context of an information system. And this governing has a direct effect on access to that information by users, information professionals, and the information system itself. One of the things I think we ought to think about more is, or one issue we need to think about is, what have users become used to in terms of their experiences with functionality? So they're used to internet search engines, not necessarily limited to bibliographic collections, but also not offering much structure and having a lot more or much more redundancy. They're used to social sites and social connections, Facebook, MySpace, all these. I just recently joined Facebook, and I don't have the time to update it every day. They're also used to recommender systems. Anybody use Amazon.com or something like it? If you enjoyed this, you might enjoy this other product. I have started to see catalogs with some of the same thing. They start put the cover, the photo of the book, and I think it won't be long until you have catalogs that might, well, if you like this one, try this other one.